Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome back once again to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. Happy and excited to talk to you about the MLB. We took a little bit of a break. We had off over the Thanksgiving holiday. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving yourself, full of food and great times with family, friends, whatever. I know I did. When I get multiple meals like that in, I'm a happy camper. You can't really mess that one up for me. But I'm excited to get back and talk a lot of baseball because we've had some things happening since the last time I was able to reach out to you guys and record a podcast. So it is currently December 1st. We have crept into December, and we're still waiting for a lot of the offseason to get absolutely rolling. But we do have some news. So we are going to talk about news and noise. We're going to get that to you guys, keep you updated. We're also going to get going with the rumor mill, things that we're hearing around the league with a lot of teams around trades and free agency. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the underrated free agent, a guy that's going to be maybe sneaking under the radar for a lot of people, but I think he's starting to pick up a little traction, that's for sure. And then lastly, I want to take a look at the history of those teams that have spent some money to pick up more than one star or one big-time player in free agency. Excited to look into that. But we're going to start things off with news and noise, getting you caught up with all teams around the MLB, around the league. And we're going to start off with one that's near and dear to my heart. It's the Boston Red Sox and left-hander Eduardo Rodriguez have reached a one-year deal, coming from some sources confirming to ESPN. It's looking to be a one-year, $8.3 million deal for the 2021 season for the left-hander. Now, Rodriguez is only 27 years old, and he had been eligible for arbitration, Tuesday being the deadline for the day that teams can tender contracts. And the thing with Rodriguez that's interesting, he did not pitch last year. He had tested positive for COVID-19 in July, had a heart condition that was associated with the disease come to the attention of some doctors, and so he decided not to play last year. The last time we did see Rodriguez pitch, well, he went 19-6 with a 3.81 ERA and 34 starts. Still scheduled to become a free agent after 2021, but if Eduardo is anything like we've seen in the past, this is a great move for the Red Sox. This is them getting a little bit of help to booster what was their biggest weakness last year, a pitching staff that was just horrible, absolutely horrible, and he'll be able to return, be back with Alex Cora. So that's some good news for Red Sox fans. I know personally I'm very excited about this. I'm just hoping he's healthy because, like we said, when we've seen him on the field, he's been great. So fingers crossed that he is going to be able to come back and return to his old form. Some other news, we had the New York Mets and reliever Trevor May reach a 2-year deal. This is also sources being confirmed to ESPN. Now, this deal has not been confirmed 100% yet because it's pending a physical, and it could be official on Wednesday by the time you are hearing this. Now, May, 31 years old, was 1-0 with a 3.86 ERA and 2 saves in 24 appearances for the Minnesota Twins last year. Now, his velocity is kind of the big thing that a lot of people have been looking into. From 2014 to 2020, there was a rise. He went from 91.9 miles per hour average to 96.4 mile per hour average when he made the switch to the bullpen. And he had, a full switch to 2016, had Tommy John surgery in 2017. He's had kind of a lot of up and down, a lot of things happening in his career. But May has spent all 6 of his seasons in the majors with the Twins. He's 23-21 overall with a 4.44 ERA. Just moving on to hopefully join a bullpen that, if healthy and right, could be pretty solid for the New York Mets. Edwin Diaz, Dylan Betances, Urias Familia. There's names there. And it's a potential sneaky good bullpen. That I have to say. And that's something that the Mets are really hoping. A lot of rebound guys. I like the low-risk signing. He has the potential to have some upside. I think it's a solid move. One of, the moves that we keep hearing about. I know it's not the exciting that we keep hearing from the Mets, but a solid move all the same, as their new president, Steve Cohen, new owner, I should say, after he completed his $2.4 billion purchase of the team, just making some small, solid moves right now. That's what it's looking like, and that's okay. You're not just one team when you're trying to build an organization, so you got to be looking to do more than that. Cleveland Indians and their rookie reliever Cam Hill underwent wrist surgery after a car accident. The surgery happened after the car accident in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Some of the details that were shared came from Cam Hill's Instagram account. He was very blessed to be only a banged-up wrist. Surgery went well. Most importantly, the others involved in the accident were all okay. We could also see from the Instagram that Hill posted a photo of him recovering in the hospital bed with his right arm pretty bandaged, but he was giving a thumbs up with the left hand. We'll see what ends up more coming from this. Pitching, being a strength, being a rookie, you hope that he can recover and have no issues. Cleveland had also said that Dr. Brian Chalkin, who is a hand specialist, operated Monday night on the right-hander's lunate bone located in the mid-carpal joint. For all my people that know medical terms so much better, that's going to mean a lot more to you than it does for me. The team said that surgery went as expected and that it does not have any details yet on Hill's rehab or when he might be able to pitch again. Now, Hill is someone who made his major league debut with the Indians on July 26th of this year, got his first save 2 days later. Overall in the season, went 2-0, 4.91 ERA in 18 games for Cleveland. So he's young. There's a lot of potential to be better, that's for sure. So not much going on there. Hopefully for a quick, speedy recovery for Hill. All the best. You never want to see an accident like this derail a career, especially when he's so young. Being drafted all the way back in the 17th round in 2014. All the best as he moves forward with the rest of his career. Some really cool and interesting news coming for the MLB. So the Major League Baseball Players Association, players are giving $500,000 to support minor leaguers whose season had been canceled because of the coronavirus. Now, if you remember back to when the season was just starting, this was a big topic for sure, considering the fact that we didn't really know if all minor leaguers were going to be paid. We were seeing some guys going to the alternate sites. They were still going to be a part of rosters, potentially getting to play a little bit. But a lot of players were kind of in limbo in the sense that we didn't know where anything was going to happen because the MLB was shutting things down, trying to limit transportation, limit players moving around as much as they possibly could. I mean, we even had stories of David Price was one that I can remember for sure that was giving up some of his own money to pay salaries for some of these minor league players. It was a big, big issue to start the year. So it's really cool to see the Players Association giving back and supporting these minor leaguers because just like all these guys that are in the pros right now, they know they had to start somewhere. And it looks like the money is going to be donated through the Major League Baseball Players Trust to More Than Baseball. It's a not-for-profit that benefits all the minor leaguers. And it's even more interesting in the sense, and I'm glad to see it, because a lot of these professional guys, even though some got paid very well, they saw a lot of their pay get cut when we went from 162 games to 60 because of the pandemic. And minor league schedules were wiped out completely. And some big league teams gave players with minor league contracts $400 weekly with stipends through May 31st. But it's not all teams extended past that. Now, a lot of them did, but not all of them did. So we had some guys living on some very, very minimum salaries. And obviously, there's a lot of other people that have less fortunate situations. But a lot of these guys trying to chase their dreams in the minors It was a tough situation for him. So it's really cool to see a situation in which the Players Association kind of takes a step forward, and they're going to help keep things moving along. So great to see. Very fun read. Happy that it ended up working out with a little bit of a positive situation. Staying with the Major League Baseball and things that they're kind of creating a little bit, the MLB is creating a minor league for top eligible prospects leading into the summer draft. It's a wood bat MLB draft league, launching with just 5 teams, and the potential for more growth, talks of maybe even a 6th. And this came from the MLB on Monday. Teams are going to play a 68-game regular season that includes an all-star break that would coincide with the draft in early July. And teams are being awarded to communities that lost franchises as MLB moved to shrink the affiliated minor leagues from 160 to 120 teams this offseason following the expiration of the professional baseball agreement, which was the relationship between the majors and the minors. The MLB has planned to eliminate the separate governing body of minor league baseball. So, a cool idea. It's going to be a Pioneer League. The 8-team Pioneer League is going to lose its affiliation status and become an independent, quote-unquote, partner league. And I feel like there's going to be a lot more information to come from this, but it's going to provide an opportunity for, I think, a lot of teams to get a chance to watch and, scout these players against other top talent. Now, there's going to be a little bit of an issue that overlaps with the College World Series. So some of the top players won't be able to join this right away. They'll have to wait till after their opening day. But this is also the same with a lot of other leagues. So one of the big ones that were mentioned is if college summer league teams like the Cape Cod League. So there's going to be opportunity here. And I'm wondering if this is ultimately going to better our draft situation. I would definitely want to keep my eye on it. Now, it's going to be something that we'd have to see long term. I don't think we can deem this a success or failure early on, but just the opportunity to see a lot of players that are considered high talents versus other talents, it's an opportunity I don't think we could pass up. And I like the idea of it. It gets some of these guys in the door. I'm interested to see how the coaching situations are, what we're bringing here, because we don't want to just give these positions to anybody. We're trying to get these guys to shine. So, like I said, a lot of questions could potentially be coming from it. But overall, the situation, I think it's a really cool idea. I'm down for it. I'm excited about it. Hopefully, this is something I get to continue on and be great. There's nothing like some extra scouting that's going to help. I'm going to be intrigued on potential high school players. I see this potentially down the line, guys that are going to be leaving high school that want to potentially be a part of this. Don't know how that's 100% going to, work its way through this, but still, there's a lot that could be happening. And it looks like the founding members of this MLB Draft League are going to be located in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New Jersey. Going to be, like we said, some teams that lost their minor league affiliations. So getting a chance to get something back and, give to these communities. Because if there's one thing that I've seen being to minor league games, I'm hoping you guys have had the opportunity to ever go to one, is there's a lot of communities that kind of thrive off of this from time to time. And they really enjoy having these teams and these big prospects coming through there. I think of when the Cubs were really starting to build their team before their World Series run and just seeing guys coming through one of their minor league teams in Iowa. It was just a big draw for a lot of those guys. The area loved it. They had a lot of exciting games. So if this is something that can continue in a lot of these towns, it's going to be great for them. So that's going to be it for our news and noise around the league, getting you caught up on what's going on with all of our major league teams. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got to talk about the rumor mill. Get you up to date on everything that's happening with free agency and trade talk around the league. We got some names and players. We got to get you up to date, tell you everything that's going on here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
We took that break like we said at the start of the podcast, taking a little bit of time to ourselves. But if there's one thing that didn't really slow down, it's a lot of the rumors and a lot of the noise that's been coming out about a lot of big-time players that could potentially be on the move. And a couple of these, unfortunately, came out and made it sound like less likely to happen. But we're going to get into that. We're going to start things off with the Washington Nationals, as it's been reported that the Nats remain unlikely to land what is, in quotes, a big ticket item. Now, if you've been keeping up to date with a lot of this, the Nationals have been connected to a lot of names. And Chris Bryant has been one that's picking up a lot of steam. DJ LeMahieu, JT Realmuto, there's been a lot. But MLB Network insider Ken Rosenthal, it seems that he's hearing that it's going to be unlikely for Washington to land one of these guys. And in an article for The Athletic, the Nats are more likely to pursue less expensive players because they feel like they have a lot of holes that they need to fill on their roster. Now, Juan Soto and Trey Turner combined for a 5.1 WAR last year in 2020. But when we look at the rest of the roster for Washington's position players, a negative 1.9. Yikes. So they need to find a lot of stopgaps in a lot of spots. And they also have some free agents they need to worry about. I mean, Adam Eaton, Eric Thames, Kurt Suzuki, some of the position players that are going to be gone, Anibal Sanchez, pitcher that's going to be gone. They still don't 100% know who their starting third baseman is going to be, especially with the loss of Anthony Rendon, which turned out to be a bigger hit than maybe a lot of people thought it was going to be. I mean, but hey, he's an MVP caliber player. Whenever you lose one of those, that's a big loss. But it had been reported before that the Nats were eyeing Bryant, LeMahieu, along with others. And it's interesting to see that there's some other prospects being brought up that are being looked at, but so the two top prospects for the Nationals, and Jackson Rutledge and Cade Cavalli, those are the guys that they're still really trying to hold on to, right-handed pitchers. And it's believed that if they're going to make a move for Chris Bryant, one of those two is going to have to go. And they really don't want to let any of their prospects go because they feel like they're still going to be rebuilding or retooling a little bit soon. So kind of some unfortunate news, but still, a lot of these sources and rumors, they don't come out of nowhere. So we're going to still keep our eye on the Nationals, but maybe we're just not going to see the big splashes like we potentially were hoping for. But if there is a team that is hoping to make a big splash still, the Cincinnati Reds are looking to make a move at the shortstop position. It seems like the Reds are big on having shortstop being a priority this offseason. And some of the marquee big-time names are ones that they're looking at. Now, there's talks about being in on Francisco Lindor and Trevor Story on the trade market. There's also talks about Marcus Semien and Dalton Simmons and Didi Gregorius. This comes to be no surprise, especially when a team may potentially want to avoid the major spending spree that could be the shortstop position next offseason. If you dive into free agency this year, you might be making a discount play. You still have the potential to get a big-time guy, but you might be saving yourself a little bit of money. It might not necessarily be the same thing if they go on the trade market for Lindor and Story. Now, the Reds last year in 2020, Freddie Galvis was their shortstop, struggled. batted .220, 712 OPS, 7 home runs in 47 games. Not cutting it for a team that seems pretty content with working their way towards, competing for a World Series. I think there's quite a few teams in the National League Central that aren't really scared of the other teams in their division. I understand that the Cubs won, but they have a lot of things that they're going to have to decide. We don't know who's all going to be there at the start of the season. The Brewers, they got some stars, but the rest of that roster is questionable at best. Cincinnati, they went out and spent some money last offseason, and they still got to worry about Trevor Bauer. They still got to get some more consistent play, but it looks like they're all in. And the Cardinals, yeah, they're there, but their offense was bad last year. Just bad. So we're going to have to see if the Reds think that they're all in and have the potential to maybe make a run to the postseason and a little bit deeper, if possible. Well, another name that's starting to receive some interest on the free agent market is James McCann. And I want to talk about him a little bit more, so I'm not going to dive into this too much, but starting to receive some interest from the Yankees, Mets, Cardinals, and Angels, in addition to a return with the White Sox. This is coming from MLB insider John Heyman. The Phillies are also a potential team, all depending on what happens with JT Realmuto. And like I said, I don't want to dive too much into his numbers because I want to save this. But he's going to be getting more interest as this season goes on. The off season's going on, I should say. I just want to say that. So keep your eye out for him. But if we're going to also talk about underrated potential signings, we need to bring up Yomiuri Giants of the Nippon Professional Baseball League in Japan and their right-hander, Tomoyuki Sugano. And this is a right-handed pitcher who is believed to be posted early this next week, or this week, potentially. A lot of general managers are going to be interested in this pursuing. Even at 31 years old, with the starting market being a little bit questionable, a lot of people believe that this is the pitcher that's right below Trevor Bauer. And a lot of teams like the Padres, Giants, and Yankees are teams to watch and trying to get Sugano into their squad to try to boost their starting pitching. Now, Sugano's spent the last 8 seasons in the Nippon Professional Baseball League, had a 2.37 ERA with 1,216 strikeouts and 265 walks in 1,362 innings. So he's got some mileage on him, but he's 31 years old. He's been playing for 8 seasons. He's a 2-time winner of the Sawamura Award, which is the top honor for a starting pitcher in the Japan baseball leagues. And he's gonna just be a name to watch. It's gonna pick up steam. We were talking about how we want to bring in underrated free agents. This is one that I think is going to pick up a little more as this offseason goes on. But I always am hesitant to deep dive into these too much because what we have seen from some of these pitchers coming over is it's really hit or miss. We've seen some great ones. We've seen some bad ones. So we'll see. That's one that I want to keep my eye on as well and see how much steam it actually picks up. Because like I said, Padres, Giants, Yankees, 2 teams that are big-time contenders, another one that wants to contend. There's going to be interest out there. Going to be a lot of interest. Stop me if you've heard this one, but the New York Mets are making a little bit of noise. And it seems like the team is focusing more on the free agent market than the trade market. And there's some reports that the top target this offseason for the Mets is George Springer. Now, I'm still in the belief in the camp that they're going to try and get multiple players if they can from this free agent class. They want to contend. They want to compete now. If you've been listening to anything that Collin has been saying with the Mets, it's he wants to win right away. He didn't get into this. He didn't buy the Mets for that massive price to just sit back and rebuild. I just think there's no possible way. And the thing is, staying with the Mets, this is where, Springer's the name, Real Muto is the name, because by many, many people, the Mets are considered to be the front runners for JT. Don't be surprised if they're also in for James McCann. There's just a lot of different ways that this could go. We know the Mets need a catcher, and they want to bring some life in this team. We've heard about LeMahieu now with Cano down with his suspension. There's a lot that could be happening there, but it seems like as of right now, top priority might be George Springer. Speaking of LeMahieu as well, it remains to be seen whether he's going to be returning to the Yankees, but a team in the AL East is high on him in the Toronto Blue Jays. But it's being reported that if the Blue Jays swing and miss on LeMahieu, they do have a backup in mind. Colton Wong is going to be the top priority free agent second baseman if LeMahieu is taken off the market for the Toronto Blue Jays. I find this one interesting because Wong is 30 years old. He's won 2 straight NL Gold Gloves, which is great at second base. Career 261 hitter over 8 MLB seasons, and all those seasons were with the Cardinals. And while many believe that LeMahieu is going to re-sign with the Yankees, I just struggle to see Wong necessarily leaving the Cardinals so easily as well. And the Blue Jays have this thought process, it looks like right now, where they are going to try to add one of these second basemen in free agency. And maybe that means Kevin Biggio is going to be moving to third and play there every day. Or maybe he's going to be a utility player and our second baseman that they signed could potentially move around. It seems like flexibility is going to be a big part of whatever decision they end up making. In 2020, Biggio did play 37 games at second base, 10 at third, and 18 in the outfield. So he was used really all over. And it just looks like the Blue Jays aren't necessarily scared to sign anywhere because they think they have some young guys that can be flexible and play a lot of different positions. And interesting enough, the Blue Jays have also been another team that's been connected to George Springer. And there had been some reports that it's more than just talking. Like things are getting pretty serious with those two as well. And it makes sense. A top outfielder that you can add from free agency to pair with a lot of your young talent. Why not look into it? It makes a great deal of sense. But we talk about a lot of these players that potentially could be staying with their teams. So it makes you think a little bit about the extension possibilities. And if there is one person that maybe has earned an extension, it has to be Freddie Freeman with the Atlanta Braves. Coming off a National League MVP award-winning season, he's a year away from free agency. And it seems like the Braves are making it a priority to sign him to a new contract this offseason, which is an interesting thing because they've made some moves already, and we don't know 100% if the Braves are going to be all in on trying to bring back Marcell Ozuna. Some of those moves were bringing in Drew Smyly, Charlie Morton, Josh Tomlin. Smyly was $11 million this year, Morton $15 million. Tomlin pretty cheap, 1 year, $1 million with a 1.25 club option for 2022. So that one's not big, but the shift being moved over to, all right, let's start to keep some of our players that we have under contract as well, which, if you watch Freddie Freeman play last year, makes a great deal of sense. Last thing that we have on the rumor mill, well, it's going to be hard for Mr. Nolan Arenado to end up moving from the Colorado Rockies. Now, this is a story that I also am very intrigued with because of his ultimate opt-out. If Arenado wants to leave the Rockies, he has the possibility to do so after this season, which also makes him interesting as a trade chip because he could be a free agent, he could be a one-year rental. But if he doesn't opt out after this year, over the next 6 seasons, he is owed $199 million, which, if Arenado continues to play at such a high defensive and offensive level, that may not be too bad. But we just had a COVID-19 season stretched down, or I shouldn't say stretch, but shrink down to 60 games, and a lot of teams lost a great deal of money. Even big-time moneymakers like the Dodgers, we hear about how they had to make some cuts, knowing that money is going to be tight. And they, interestingly enough, are one of the teams that are intrigued at Arenado coming to play third base because they're losing Justin Turner potentially to another team in free agency. And the Dodgers also have to think about their team moving forward. Corey Seager, shortstop, going to be a free agent. Center fielder, Cody Bellinger. You're going to probably want to work an extension out somewhere in the near future as well. And while Bellinger has control for a few more seasons, you just got to think the Dodgers might be looking at keeping some of their own, and it might be harder than we originally anticipated to take on a major contract, even for the Dodgers. Unbelievable how this has hit so many teams hard this COVID season. There's just a lot going on there. So that's a look into some of our rumor mill trade and free agent targets. Conversations just continue to keep rolling along. We're going to see some big moves come here eventually. All right? We're going to have these big dominoes fall, and we're going to see everything else fall afterwards. But right now, it's just a lot of chatter, a lot of talk, and we're seeing a lot of connections. Some of the same teams spread across a lot of these big names, but until we get ink to paper, we don't 100% know for a lot of these things. So we're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about who might potentially be the most underrated free agent in this free agent class coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Now, don't get me wrong. There is a lot of great free agents in this free agent class. There's some top-end players. George Springer, Trevor Bauer, DJ LeMahieu, Marcell Ozuna, and then we get into our shortstops, Marcus Semien, Didi Gregorius. Nelson Cruz is an interesting name. We got some great relievers. There's a lot of names out there that are going to be very exciting, including our man, Mr. JT Realmuto, a catcher who a lot of people are excited about because, let's just face it, he's a very athletic catcher that plays in all facets of the game. Strong defensively, strong offensively, very athletic. He'll steal you bases. He just does everything so well that he is believed to be potentially the best catcher in baseball. There's no surprise there. No surprise there. Very deserving of all of it. But with that said, we potentially have a player on the market at the catcher position that may be one of the most underrated players in the MLB that just needs a little more attention. Okay? He just needs to be talked about more. And that's going to be James McCann. He is someone that has been in Chicago with the White Sox the last couple seasons and ultimately is getting a lot of traction with a lot of teams. Now, the catching position doesn't have a lot of great hitters. They have guys that are more there for their defense, which is important. You're involved in pretty much every play. And when we take into account the 2019 and 2020 season for McCann and compare it to top of our class free agent JT Realmuto, things get very interesting. So since 2019, Realmuto has been slashing a 273, 333, 492 with 36 home runs and 115 RBIs. McCann has been slashing a 276, so a better average, 334, 474. Very comparable. The only thing that's missing is 11 less home runs at 25 and less RBIs. But that could be a mixture of the things. There's opportunity where he's batting. There's a lot that can go into RBIs. Now, like we said before, Realmuto he's not just a hitter. Okay? And nobody's going to argue against him not being a great player. But McCann is going to be a guy that might sneak in and find a home a little bit faster just because he's not the top catcher on the market. And Realmuto is going to be looking to get paid. I don't think there's any doubt in that. He's going to be looking to get his contract. But a lot of these teams that are going to think that Realmuto is pricing himself out are going to move their eye to McCann. And we're starting to already see that in a team that we thought would be the front runners for Realmuto. On Monday, we saw a report that the Mets are showing potentially some serious interest in McCann and might actually be looking into him more than Realmuto. Now, this could be because of money. This could be because they're trying to sign someone else and clear up some room for other players. We talked about how George Springer is big on their list. Maybe they're going to make a move for Springer, one other guy, and try to make a move for McCann. But they're also not the only team that has interest in James McCann. We're hearing about the Angels, the Cardinals, the Phillies, the Yankees, as other teams that are looking into this. So I look at this and I'm wondering, is it more because teams don't want to pay the money for Realmuto, or do we have some other players that are out there better than we think? McCann does a lot of what Realmuto does offensively, and he's going to be cheaper. But there's also other things that go into this as well. Now, McCann's getting to be a lot better defensively. He was splitting duties last year with Yasmani Grandal, who is also considered to be a top catcher in the major league. And we've seen reports coming around that McCann has been working on pitch framing, doing a lot of things defensively, tinkering with things that are going on with him. And he went from being a below average defensive catcher in his first 5 seasons, and he was almost dead last among catchers in runs from extra strikes being saved in 2019. But that didn't just flip from 2019 to 2020. So we'll just look at this. Out of qualified catchers in runs from extra strikes totals by MLB ranks from 2015 to 2020. In 2015, McCann ranked 55th out of 56 catchers. 2016, 44th out of 63. 2017, 59th out of 62. 2018, a big jump for him, but still not great. 30th out of 60. 2019, 64th out of 64, so dead last. But then in 2020, was tied for 6th out of 62. Making a big step forward and helping working behind the plate. And I don't think you just make that kind of jump by luck. Like, that just doesn't seem to happen. And they took the time to really break down where McCann was making his improvements. But it was in most of the plate. He was doing a lot of better things, framing pitches all over. Sometimes we just have guys that are picking it up from the bottom of the strike zone, side to side. No, he was doing it really all over. McCann was also the guy that was there to catch Lucas Giolito's no-hitter. And in that game, it was said that McCann got 4 strike calls on pitches that had less than a 50% strike probability. So he was a part in helping in that game as well. Now, I obviously do not want to take away from a pitcher from a no-hitter, but when you have a great catcher, a guy who's working his tail off behind the plate, it's only going to help you. And it's some of his best work. It really is. He was an impressive player, not only offensively, but the jump that he took defensively. And that's where we need to start looking at maybe this is a guy that we can get at a nice discount price and be a little bit better for the sense if we want to build more of our team. And I need to say this with a caveat, a word of caution. Yes, this is a one season jump. And if you want to dismiss this because of that, I can't argue that on that. I can't argue against you on that point. I get it. I understand. But when you go from being one of the worst in the league to a top 10 performer in something, there usually is a reason why. And the other thing that I think concerns me a little bit is McCann started 27 games at catcher while sharing time with Grandal. And that's a small sample as well, playing about half the games. So you wonder if the timing of this is, McCann is 30 years old, close to the same age as Real Muto, and he's going to hit the market. Maybe he was the benefit of timing on a short season, having some improvement in some areas, and all around making himself look like a better player. Timing matters. I mean, how many guys do we see improve their numbers as they go into free agency? It happens a lot. But I just want to say we might have potentially a very underrated free agent here in Brian McCann who should be getting a little bit more love. Because when we have teams that are going to be shelling out hundreds of millions of dollars and lots of years to a Real Muto, is it possible that we could get another guy at a cheaper deal, potentially as an option so that we can make our team better all around? I'm not an MLB GM. Thankfully, I don't have to make a lot of the hard decisions. As much fun as that would be, I don't have to make them all. But I would be taking a hard look at McCann and seriously considering, hey, if we need catcher help, but we need help in other places, we got to look at this guy. A plus hitter out of all backstops that are available, and potentially on the up and up with some work behind the plate. I think I'd be willing to take that chance. It's hard to find a great catcher in the MLB. It really is. There's not that many that are just dominant. So I think I would like to put my finances maybe in another position where I know a guy can be more of a difference maker, or at least a guaranteed difference maker, instead of going all in on Real Muto. I love Real Muto. I really do. I love him as a player, and I don't want to take this as a slight, like you're trying to knock him, like he doesn't deserve his money. No, he's great. He's been great with the Marlins, great with the Phillies. He's just very deserving of what he gets. But in a position where we look at it across the league and we don't think it's necessarily as strong as it's been in past years, I just got to give this guy a look. I got to give McCann a little bit of love. So that's going to be my guy I got to talk about. Underrated free agent. I'm considering taking a deep dive into this and looking at some other guys that, until we start getting more signatures, more guys on teams, I want to talk about some more of these underrated free agents. But that's my first one for sure. James McCann. Had to put it out there. We're going to take one more quick break, but then when we come back, I want to talk about the history of some teams that land more than one star in free agency. And how has it panned out? It's a fun conversation, one I really enjoyed reading up on and diving into. Coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC Podcast Network.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
The more and more that we hear about these teams that are interested in coming out with a couple players from this free agent period, well, it makes me think about, well, hasn't this happened before? And we really start to talk about a lot of the teams that went, all in, and they tried to build or replace or just make themselves serious contenders over one offseason. And oddly enough, as I was thinking about this, and mainly kind of the Mets, I'm looking at you, Mets, among some other teams, I was curious to how this has worked in the past. And there was a great article on MLB.com from David Elder. This came out on November 27th about 16 of the biggest free agent splashes, so teams that landed more than one star in the same offseason. And it really makes us look and see, well, what has been the past history of this? And if there's been one thing, I would say that it's not necessarily, I don't want to say this incorrectly, but not necessarily the best evidence to see it works either way. And a lot of the times we might see one of the players not pan out in a lot of these situations. So instead of just, me trying to explain it, awfully sometimes, let's dive right into some examples of it. So, like, the biggest one that we've seen recently was just last year, as the Chicago White Sox gave out 3 years, $55 million for Dallas Keuchel, 4 years, $73 million for Yasmani Grandal, and then a 1 year, $12 million for Edwin Encarnacion. So we knew from last offseason that they were up and coming, and they were trying to get some solid veteran players in there off the free agent market. Keuchel was having a great year for the Braves. Grandal was really awesome as well, as he did a 1 year deal with the Brewers and really paid off from it. And Encarnacion came in as a big time slugger that was going to be their DH person. Now, Encarnacion really didn't play, and he struggled when he did. And that was the big issue. The other two, they were just fine. You can't be upset about it. And going forward, the White Sox really have set themselves up, and they probably feel really great about these moves. So this one was a positive, and also Encarnacion, he's out of the building, so they didn't really have to worry about that. The next one we saw before that, well, this one might go a little bit of a different direction. The 2018-19 Philadelphia Phillies. Bryce Harper got us 13 years, $330 million, but then Andrew McCutchen got 3 years, $50 million, and David Robertson, 2 years, $23 million. Now, Harper going there was pretty hyped up, and I can't say that his 2 years have been awful. He's putting up great numbers. He's doing well. But the Phillies are kind of expecting more. They want him to be an MVP. They want to go to the playoffs. They want to make deep runs, and they haven't been getting that. And if McCutchen and Robertson maybe didn't get hurt, it might not have been as bad. But McCutchen only played 59 games before tearing his ACL. 834 OPS, 10 homers in those 59 games. Not awful, but he's got injury problems. David Robertson shut down, needed Tommy John surgery, only pitched in 7 games. First time in a decade that a reliever didn't reach, that he as a reliever didn't reach 60 appearances. And we know that bullpen, awful. So that one, so far, doesn't look so great. What did we have before that? This one just pains me. Don't even really want to talk about it, but it's history and it needs to be brought up. 2014-2015 Red Sox. Hanley Ramirez, 4 years, $88 million. Pablo Sandoval, 5 years, $95 million. And Pablo Sandoval might go down as one of the worst mistakes the Red Sox have ever made. Coming off being a big part of the Giants, winning World Series in 2012, 2014. He actually was really good in that 2014 postseason too. You can't take that from him. He had great numbers. But struggled 2015, injured in 2016, struggled again in 2017, and then finally he was gone. The Red Sox owed him $50 million at that time when he was cut. He ended up going back to the Giants, and he wasn't that bad, and that's probably what also hurt as much. And then Hanley Ramirez, well, he was okay. 2016, he was all right, batted .286, 30 home runs, 111 RBIs. Postseason was pretty good as well, batted .571, 1.314 OPS in the 2017 Division Series against the Astros. But then he struggled again in 2018 and was designated for assignment and gone, and his career was pretty much done. So far, the last three big all-in guys, one time it worked, twice it didn't. We go back before that, well, the 2013-2014 Yankees, Jacoby Ellsbury, Brian McCann, Masahiro Tanaka. Now, Ellsbury and McCann, they were okay, but they weren't everything that you would have wanted. Now, I shouldn't say Ellsbury was okay. He was the guy that was supposed to be the huge addition. 7 years, $153 million. Tanaka also got 7 years, $155 million. We'll get to him in a little bit. And not only was he a big signing, but he was a pull away from the Red Sox. They thought, oh man, we're going to poach this guy away. He's going to be great. But they didn't make the playoffs in 2014. They had just missed it 2 years before that, the 2 seasons, and it just was an awful move for them. They made the playoffs afterwards for the next 5 years, and Tanaka was strong for them in the postseason. But it wasn't Ellsbury. It wasn't necessarily McCann. 2 of their 3 didn't work out, and it was a lot of their younger players coming up, the young talent, that actually was the thing that pushed them over. Because when it came down to it, with all the injuries and performance, Ellsbury was let go with a year and $26 million left on his contract. I mean, they were riding that thing out. They couldn't trade it away. So that one didn't work. So in our last 3 big spendings, 1 worked, 3 did not. And the one that I thought of immediately when I thought of a team trying to go get 2 big guys was Albert Pujols' 10-year, $240 million contract, and C.J. Wilson signing in the same year for 5 years, $77.5 million. Now, at the time, it was the Angels had a brand new general manager. And so they decided to go in, and they pulled off big signings. And this was happening at the winter meetings of that year. And this was the biggest contract. Pujols was the big get as a free agent. And a lot of people were trying to pry him away. And then on top of it, they get C.J. Wilson, who was one of the big pitching arms out there. But now that we look at it long term, 9 seasons, the Angels have made the playoffs once since Albert Pujols has been there. You see articles that talk about how when his contract is gone, hey, now we can do something with that money. That's the excitement. His contract's coming to an end. And this is all happening with Mike Trout on the roster. Now, he hasn't been an awful player. He's got over 1,000 hits, 200 home runs, 230 home run seasons, a 40 home run season. And he's done a lot of big milestones that's going to make him an exciting draw to your park. But he wasn't St. Louis Cardinals Pujols. Dominant. Couldn't get this guy out. Everything was in play. There was a decline there. And age might have played a factor, but when you're shelling out 2 massive contracts like this, it makes it hard to build the rest of a team. And that salary is going till the 2021 season. And it's made that contract have a lot of criticism, and it's deservingly so. These massive 10-plus year contracts, yeah, they're great for the players, but they're not necessarily great for these teams that are signing them to them. So, again, one that worked, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 that weren't too great. Now, before that, 2011, 2012, same offseason. Jose Reyes, Mark Burley, and Heath Bell all going to the Marlins. And this was a chance to try to build a contender. I remember how exciting this was. This was new ballpark. The Marlins were going all in. This was going to be the team. Oh, man, did this ever backfire? Did this ever backfire? $200 million to 3 players. They won 69 games that season, the Marlins. Finished last in the National League East for the second straight year, and were worse than the year before. And then it was all done. They broke it all up. They started moving players. They traded Jose Reyes and Mark Burley to the Blue Jays in a big 12-player deal. It didn't work. So we're seeing a lot more of these not be successful. Now, I don't want to stop here and say, hey, look at this. Don't do this. Don't sign 2 guys. Because there has been some times where it worked out all right. 2008, 2009, I know a long time ago, but when the Yankees went in and they got CC Sabathia, Mark Teixeira, and AJ Burnett, these were big contracts. Teixeira, 8 years, $180 million. Sabathia, 7 years, $161. Burnett, 5 years, $82.5. And they went on. They won the World Series in 2009. It was their first title since 2000. Sabathia has been a great Yankee ever since. I mean, done now, but he was a big part, and he's going to have a Hall of Fame career. The Yankees love him. Did great things. And I got nothing bad. I have a lot of respect for CC Sabathia. Yes, I hate that he's a Yankee. I am a Red Sox fan, and that is awful. But I saw what he did with the Milwaukee Brewers in that half season up close, living in this area. And that guy put his body on the line, pitched on short rest, and risked it all just for a playoff berth for the Milwaukee Brewers. I mean, I have a lot of respect for him. Was just an absolute workhorse. And then on top of that, Teixeira was great. Batted .292, 39 home runs, 122 RBIs, was runner-up in the AL MVP in that first year. Big part of why they moved on in the postseason. And while AJ Burnett wasn't top stuff, superstar, he was pretty solid in that rotation. And he pitched a lot of great playoff games, won Game 2 in the World Series. You can't knock it. So that's a situation. We signed these 3 guys. We got a World Series right out of it. Worked out. 2004, 2005. Again, I know a long time ago, but the Mets went in and got Carlos Beltran, Pedro Martinez. Beltran, 7 years, $119 million. Martinez, 4 years, $53. We saw, this is when young guys were coming up for the Mets. David Wright, Jose Reyes. And the Mets went all in. They went from 71, 91 to 83 and 79 the following season. A year later, they were tough. They had the National League's best record in 2006. Beltran had 41 home runs, won a Gold Glove in center field, finished 4th in the NL MVP. Mets won the NL East. They were a game away from the World Series. We don't talk a lot about Pedro in this whole situation, but it ended up working out. It ended up working out for the team. 2003, 2004, the Angels went all in on Bartolo Colon and Vladimir Guerrero. Guerrero, 5 years, $70 million. Colon, 4 years, $51. And Guerrero is one of the best signings. I mean, he was great. Long time in Montreal, came over at 29. MVP his first year with the Angels, hit 39 home runs, drove in 126 runs. In his 5 seasons, first 5 in Anaheim, I should say, averaged 32 home runs and 113 RBIs a season. 4-time All-Star. He's entered the Hall of Fame as an Angel. I mean, his time there was so great. And Bartolo Colon was great too. Won 18 games 2004, 21 and 8 the next year, won the AL Cy Young. So we do see situations where this has worked both ways. Now, it's been a while, but at the same time, this doesn't happen all that often. And we also have some other ones that were as well really bad. Really bad. Mike Hampton, Danny Neagle for the Rockies. Ooh, didn't work out. But on the flip side, Randy Johnson and Steve Finley for the Diamondbacks. You're going to have all of these go both ways, and it's fun to look at these. I mean, 1996. Moises Alou, Bobby Bonilla, Alex Fernandez. That's a fun one. The Astros in 1980, signing Nolan Ryan and Joe Morgan. A lot of these contracts. A lot of fun. The jury isn't really out on this, if it works, yes or no. And there's potential we're going to see it happen this offseason. The Mets, again, I'm looking at the Mets. We're going to get to reevaluate, and we could truly see, well, the Harper Phillies didn't work too well 2 years ago. It's last year, the White Sox, not too bad. What could it be this year? Could be very exciting. I'm very interested. I want to see some of these names get signed. I want to see it happen. I'm ready for it. So we're going to have to see where it goes. But that's going to be it for me on this episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I want to thank you once again for tuning in, listening, downloading. It means a great deal. I'm just fortunate, very thankful. I know we just passed Thanksgiving, but very thankful for all the things you guys do. If you have the opportunity, I would be so appreciative if you could leave a positive comment, review on anything going on with the show. It means a great deal. Maybe you got some things you want to talk about. Who's your underrated free agent? What's some news and noise that maybe you want to talk about a little bit more, maybe even on the rumor mill? A lot of great stuff. But I want to thank you once again for tuning in. I'm Collin Manley signing off here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.